At some point, there's going to be no one left to blame but Kevin Stefanski. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. The Browns have a lot of issues, but at some point, the finger has to be pointed back at Kevin Stefanski for the struggles on offense. What Stefanski said about some of those key moments of the game that proved costly for the Browns against the Vikings, and if Dillon Gabriel is the guy that Stefanski and company claim he is, the training wheels should be coming off here pretty quickly for the young QB. I do want to thank you for being here every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. And this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. And I talked about it on Sunday's show after the game about the idea that Kevin Stefanski did deserve some blame for the way that things played out in crunch time in particular for this Browns team against the Minnesota Vikings. But I think, and we're going to get into his explanations for some of that here coming up in a little bit, but where I want to start with this conversation is just the idea that this Browns offense is in such a putrid spot. And there has been plenty of places to point the finger over the last year plus of this offense struggling to say, well, this circumstance has led to this or that circumstance has led to that. Like, I'm not saying that there aren't other reasons why things aren't going well for this Cleveland Browns offense right now and why it's been a colossal disaster, all things considered. Like, I certainly see that. I certainly understand that. And there are a lot of reasons why things aren't great. And you could easily just point to the makeup of the roster and say, well, he doesn't have this, he doesn't have that. And I 100% get that. The quarterback play has been miserable. But at some point, there's not going to be anywhere left to point the finger other than at Kevin Stefanski, who is the mastermind or supposed to be the mastermind behind this Cleveland Browns offense. And the facts ultimately are the facts. I looked this up earlier. According to our friends at True Media, the Browns are currently tied for the third longest streak of 10 games, scoring less than 20 points since 2000. So 10 games is the third longest streak since 2000 where teams haven't scored 20 points. And that's over the course, obviously, dating back to week 13 of last year. That Broncos Monday night game was the last time they did score 20 or more points. The other two teams that are tied with them are the 2005 Ravens and the 2001 Lions, who each hit that mark in those respective seasons. There are two teams that had longer streaks than the Browns. Washington, between the 03-04 season, went on a 12-game streak where they didn't score 20 points. And Arizona, between the 2000 and 2001 season, have the record over this span of time since the year 2000, where they went 13 games without scoring 20 points. Another note off of this, of the other two teams that the Browns are tied with, the 05 Ravens and the 2021 Lions, the Browns have scored the least amount of points over that 10-game span. Ravens scored 116 in their 10-game streak. The Lions scored 141 points in their 10-game streak. So these are all instances and examples of how bad this has been. Another sort of branch off of the 10-game streak without scoring 20 points stat is just what other teams have done in that same amount of span, essentially. And I can tell you that since the Browns last scored 20 points in a game, so again, week 13 of last year, every other team has had multiple 20-point games, 20-plus point games, and 27 of the 32 teams have even scored 20 or more points in a half since then. So everybody else has done this. The Browns are the only team that hasn't. Since the Browns last scored 20 points in a game or more in week 13. And that's all via True Media. Like, these stats are damning. The offense is bad. And I do think, like, yesterday you saw that moving things over to handing things over to Dillon Gabriel did provide at least a little bit of a spark. I think the offense was a little bit better. They scored 17 points, which matched their career high. which the last 17 points kind of came via garbage time touchdown from Dillon Gabriel, or thanks to a garbage time touchdown from Dillon Gabriel against the Ravens back in week 2. So, he was part of the equation in getting to 17 points earlier this year. But a lot of what you saw on offense was still a lot of the same stuff where they can't push the ball downfield. It was a lot of dink and dunk. The air yards from Dillon Gabriel were not very good. Like he's not pushing it down the field very much. He's not looking deep. When he was looking deep, he would sail the ball, or he wasn't on the same page with the receiver, whether it was Isaiah Bond or otherwise. And so there's still some things that have to sort of happen here. I don't know that Dillon. I don't know that yesterday I told us conclusively that Dillon is going to light up the scoreboard at any point this season or in his career or whatever, that he's that type of quarterback. I think, like I wrote and I talked about on yesterday's show, I'm intrigued. I think he did enough yesterday to leave fans intrigued by, hey, once the training wheels come off of this offense a little bit and they do start trying to do more, what can he be? I think that's how people should leave that game. But I don't know that you're going to get that answer, in the next couple games either. And I still think like Stefanski's going to try to protect Gabriel as best he can to have him call like a clean game. That was what was most important to Kevin Stefanski yesterday, was playing a clean football game, which he got from Dillon Gabriel. My hope, though, is that as time goes on, they can start to do even more with him and give him more opportunities to do some different things, and then we'll learn more about him. And I don't want to spend this segment talking about just Dillon Gabriel, but I referenced how I thought the conservative play calling worked until it didn't. And that's another part of this equation for Kevin Stefanski. Like, at some point, we can make all these excuses about how bad things have been and for whatever reasons, the quarterback play. Yes, obviously, they continue to say that the Deshaun decision was a group effort. So if that's the case, okay, then I guess that's then everybody who is a part of it deserves a little bit of the blame in terms of the pie chart if you're divvying it up, because they all had a hand in that. But that didn't work. The things that Kevin Stefanski, we used to be able to tout for him as an offensive coach, that he got more out of Baker Mayfield than anybody, that he made like a guy like Jacoby Brissett look respectable. Like those things are sort of going to the wayside now as Joe Flacco falters the second time around that he's here. And Dillon Gabriel, we don't know what he fully can be yet. But like I at some point, the offense that he runs and the offense that he's in charge of, if it's not producing, and that's what he was brought here to do, the blame's only going to have to land at his feet. And this kind of goes back to as well, just like you are what your record says you are what Kevin Stefanski largely is like what his offense says he is. And right now his offense is a group that can't score 20 points or more in a game when everybody else around the NFL has no problem doing that in on multiple occasions. And they can't win a lot of football games. And those two things kind of go hand in hand. The offense not being able to score is why Kevin Stefanski's record gets worse and worse by the week. And why it takes miracles like they saw in week 3 to win football games where you get some big special teams plays or momentum changers and you basically hand the offense a touchdown in order to win the game. So while I think the offense was better, there's still signs that this thing just ain't working. And again, I get it. Like you can point and say drop passes. You can point and say offensive line play has been bad. Those things are all true. But at some point, you're going to run out of places to point the finger other than at the head coach. And I think he would understand that to a degree too, because at the end of the day, like when you're the head coach of the football team, it's on you to have this team prepared. It's on you to have this team going in, heading in the right direction from a standpoint of playing winning football. And he doesn't have that right now. And when you're also the mastermind and the architect of the offense and is producing what it's producing, I don't know where else you're supposed to look. I get that he's handicapped to a degree on the personnel that they have here. But did he not play a role in bringing some of these guys in? Did he not play a role in like building this offense? And you see other teams, you see the Kyle Shanahans of the world, you see the Kevin O'Connells who he just went up against this weekend with a banged up offensive line, 3 starters out, still finding ways to win football games with lesser players. Kevin Stefanski hasn't been able to do that of late. And I think that was a calling card of his early on in his time here, but now I think that's going to the wayside. So this isn't me saying, sitting here today, fire Kevin Stefanski. I'm trying to make that point very clear. I'm not saying that it has to happen right this second. I actually think, I honestly, as I've said it a bunch of times, I think it's unlikely to happen during the season or at the end of the season anyway. But I do think that we're getting to a point where the results have to be there because it's a results-based business, or you're gonna have there's gonna the questions that exist there about maybe finding and changing things up are going to be very, very warranted, because you can only for so long direct the blame all these other places. At some point, it falls on the man in charge of the team, and that obviously is largely Kevin Stefanski right now, and specifically the offense and the struggles. I mean, I can't. It's hard for me to defend some of the things this offense is doing so putridly, and just think that like it's all going to get fixed. And that they, like if you insert new pieces and parts year to year, like, yeah, maybe, but like, even if you draft a rookie quarterback, what if it takes that guy some time to sort of figure things out? There's just so much that still is unknown with this team. And I understand where people are getting frustrated at this point with Kevin Stefanski. And like I said, I'm not saying fire him right this second, but there's not a lot of other places that remain to, look and say, where does the blame go at this point? Because ultimately that falls on at some point, it has to fall in the coach's lap. And I think we are getting awfully close to that being the case. I don't know that it ends in him getting fired this season. I'm not saying anybody should be rooting for that. I would rather see them turn it around and see this offense have success and get back to doing what they were doing in 2020. Do they have the personnel to do that? I don't know. But at some point, like, the clock runs out and you only get so much time to sort of prove that. I have plenty of questions. I think others have plenty of questions, but I do think that there's more criticism than ever directed at Stefanski, and I do think right now it's warranted. I do think it's fair. Along those lines, we know that there were certain situations in this Vikings game that were not ideal in terms of the way that they were executed. That's another part of this conversation that needs to be had, and we'll play you at least one of Kevin Stefanski's answers from his Monday press conference and what happened on that second to last drive where they could only take 22 seconds off the clock. That's coming up next in the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's a local sports bar packed on game days, that coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving the community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. One of my favorite lunch spots on the east side is the Van Aken Market. It runs on Square. It's one of those places that you walk in, and I feel like you almost always see someone that you know. And every time I go there, I find myself torn between different food options. When I finally do make a decision, it's nice to know that I can get cashed out quickly and easily thanks to Square. When the neighborhood's businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedon NFL to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. This episode is also brought to you by Mazda, moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is, I'm going with Dillon Gabriel's touchdown pass in the first quarter to Harold Fannin Jr. It was a beautifully designed play. As I talk about Kevin Stefanski and some of the issues the offense is having, I thought this was one of his best plays of the day on Sunday, where it was a little play action, hesitation, sort of fake block by Fannin, goes out to the far side of the field, and Gabriel hit him perfectly on the pass. It was the first highlight of a pretty solid day overall for Dillon Gabriel, who threw for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns in the day. Wasn't quite enough for the Browns to win, but let's be honest, we're all a little intrigued to see what else Dillon Gabriel can do as he continues to get comfortable in this offense. And listen, when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's also more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, so I talked about Kevin Stefanski and the offensive struggles, and I read off some stats and told you why at some point he's the only person left to answer for why these things are a problem and why the offense can't get itself stuck out of the mud to a degree and can't score 20 points in a game. I do think that the extension of this conversation, at least from Sunday, goes into some of the decision-making that was made in key moments in this game from Stefanski and specific to the offense. Now, the drive I think is the most crucial to talk about here is that fourth quarter drive, second to last drive of the game, where essentially You got 3:27 on the clock and a chance to, milk the game away if you can get a first down potentially, or at least make the Vikings burn their timeouts. And the Browns used 22 seconds, 2 runs into a very heavy loaded box that gets stuffed. And then you throw an incomplete pass. So the Vikings not got to save their timeout, and you gave them the ball back after just 22 seconds, which then set up the final drive of the game where the Vikings go down. I guess not technically the final drive because the Browns got it back, but the second to last drive of the game is for both teams, where the Vikings go down the field, score the game-winning touchdown, and that's just about that. There were some other moments in there too. Kevin Stefanski calling timeout late in that Vikings drive to try to save some time for him to get the ball back and try to score, which seemed like it came maybe a little bit too late at that time, or that you'd rather just put the pressure on the Vikings to have to use their timeout instead of kind of giving them or gifting them a timeout, if you will. There was also late in the half, taking his time with the clock to sort of get down there and kick the field goal, and not use a timeout in certain instances as the clock sort of ran. And I think that was mostly about trying to leave no time for the Vikings. But no matter what, I think all these decisions kind of deserved to be talked about. And I will play you here. This was Kevin Stefanski on Monday talking specifically about that second to last drive of the game and the way he played it. And I guess in some respects, like some of the regrets that you have as a coach as you look back on it. Here's what he had to say.
Getting to 4-minute drives, and the goal there is to stay on the field, get first downs, make the clock roll, and finish the game with the ball. Obviously, going 3 and out doesn't get it done. And when you look at that as a coach, you always immediately, and also now, think about different things that you can do. There's ton of philosophies there, and what you're trying to do, who you're trying to play through. If you want to have risk involved and potentially use the quarterback there. So there's all sorts of things that we can do in that situation. And anytime you come up short, you always think about putting your players in position to succeed. So frustrating to not gain yards on that first and second down calls, and then frustrated obviously to come away with an incompletion on third down. But we'll teach off of it. We'll learn from it.
Obviously, I'm sure Browns fans like yourself hope that they learn off of it and that they can improve off of it. And to his point, like, I get what he's saying. I think I talked about this on Sunday. I get what he's saying, where there's a number of different philosophies of how you sort of handle that situation. You want to look back. You always look back as a coach, and when it doesn't go your way, you second guess and think about ways you could have maybe done things differently. And that's going to happen to anybody. And I get that that's human nature. I do understand where like it's a lose-lose. If you try to be aggressive and pick up the first down and it doesn't work, and you stop the clock because you have 2 incompletions or something like that, people are going to say, well, you played this wrong. You screwed this up. If you do the opposite and you do what Kevin Stefanski did and you run the football a couple times, try to make him burn the timeouts, and then, give him the ball back and you didn't really burn a lot of time, and you weren't aggressive in trying to pick up the first down, people are going to say, well, why wouldn't you try to just end the game there? So it's a double-edged sword in that way, because you're going to get ridiculed regardless of what you choose. I said it on Sunday. I think I like the idea of being more aggressive and trying to sort of end the game yourself. And it didn't seem like he was trusting of Dillon Gabriel enough to make a play in that spot to do that. So I don't know if that was just part of like the conservativeness of the game plan and what they were trying to sort of accomplish with Dillon Gabriel, but they definitely, banked on, hey, let's just run the football. And I think the problem too is that he tried to do both things. He tried to make them milk the timeouts, and then he decided, now we're going to try to pick up the first down. He had to either do one or the other. It either had to be, all right, we ran it twice, got stuffed. Let's run it a third time and at least make them spend their time out. And then, we'll live with the results. But he tried to do both, and then it was kind of too little too late. Not a good throw by Gabriel, obviously. I think that was one of the plays where him and Isaiah Bond didn't seem like they were on the same page. And it comes up incomplete, and they're forced to punt after just 22 seconds, and you let them preserve their timeout. Listen, so I get it. Like, this is kind of a lose-lose for Kevin in general. It was going to be part of the conversation of like where to place blame. I think I would prefer he does that. He plays that situation differently, like I said. And he didn't trust. I don't think he was very trusting of Gabriel or the offense in that situation to be aggressive and go pick it up. I think he noticed that. I think he knew they had done a good job running the football all day, so they leaned on their strength. I can understand that. I also do too understand him basically banking on, listen, my defense is great, so let's punt it and try to see if they can get a stop, because normally they're going to get a stop in that situation. And I can understand where he was trying to trust them to do that. But in this instance, and this is part of the problem with the way the Browns are built, when you're leaning on, hey, we need our defense to be perfect every game and basically set us up for the win and hold teams to under 20 points every single week, and your offense is what the offense is, that's not going to be a winning formula every single week. And sometimes there's going to be lapses that lead to scores like we saw for the Browns defense on that final drive. It's unfortunate. I get trusting your defense to a degree, but I also think if there was confidence in Dillon Gabriel, there was confidence in this offense at all, I think Kevin Stefanski would have probably tried to be more aggressive there and try to put this game away with under 4 minutes to go there. It was just it was a terrible way for that sort of drive to be handled. And I do think that the criticisms of it are very, very fair. They also, the fact that they went 3 and out, I guess, I mean, they only ran 3 plays at the end of the game when time expired, but three and out 3 times in the fourth quarter, that doesn't help you either. So there was just a lot that went wrong in general in that fourth quarter of play. You also had the fumble with about 14:01 to go in the fourth quarter, and then the Shelby Harris penalty pushes you back to the 30 instead of getting the ball like the 40. You're at the Cleveland 42, better field position. Maybe that drive ends in points, and then you set up a different situation. So there is a lot that goes into play here. But I also understand where the way that the game was called late and the conservativeness of it all worked until it didn't. And, running into 2 boxes loaded with 8 guys maybe wasn't the play there. I almost wanted to see if he'd be aggressive and try to throw it a little bit, even with some easy completions that Gabriel can complete, even if it's on like a rollout type of play. Nothing too crazy or too risky. I understand trying to be risk adverse, but I think that's part of the problem here. Is like, I think this offense and the struggles they have at this point are sort of in Kevin Stefanski's head, where he doesn't have any trust in them in that situation to sort of get the job done. But my feeling on it is, listen, if you don't convert that and they stop you, then maybe you end up giving the ball back to them with a shorter field or whatever. I'm not saying they go for it on 4th down, but like, even if you give them, even if you get the incompletions but there's more time in the clock or whatever, they go down and score, then you at least have more time to potentially get the ball back and try to score yourself. I don't know. I think there's a living in your fears type thing going on here with the way that he called that moment specifically. And I do think that there was plays to be made there that sort of give yourself a chance to ice the game, rather than just have to depend on your defense to do everything for you. It didn't work. And if it had worked, we'd be probably talking differently. But I think I liked being more aggressive there. And I think the circumstances of that game, Dillon Gabriel being a rookie, trying to be conservative, all that sort of played into it here. And that I just, again, it goes back to the problems with this offense, but it also goes back to the way that Kevin Stefanski, I think, is just sort of more conservative minded and risk averse, especially with how much his team has turned the ball over already this season. But it fell into or flowed into this game and impacted the final result in a lot of ways. So as we talk about where to direct blame, we talk about the struggles with the offense, and we talk about Kevin Stefanski and how at some point, like, he's going to have to own what the team's record is. He's going to have to own how bad this offense has been, all those things. Like, all that can be true. And I think in these moments, like, this is a game with a lot of decisions made by Stefanski that leave a lot of questions. And as we work through those questions and he gets asked about those questions, I understand where some of the fan base is at today, where they are ready to move on and they want him fired and all those different things. I'm never going to call for somebody's job, but I do think, like, and I do largely think Kevin Stefanski, I said it before, like, has been part of the solution more so than the problem, and can continue to be that in the grand scheme of things. But yesterday was a bad game for him. And with the heat sort of turning up on, what's wrong with this Browns team and the offense and all these different things, it makes sense that he is kind of caught in the crosshairs here in terms of some of the decisions that he made in that game as well, on top of everything else that's going on with his team right now and the struggles that they're having. It all kind of adds up to a coach who certainly has plenty of reason to be criticized, and I understand where all those things are coming from. So I'm with you. I get it. I think that situation specific to the second to last drive of the game was not handled great, and he should have been more aggressive in calling those plays and what he decided to do. I hope, as he said, that they can learn from it, because what you want to see is what they do next time they're in that situation. And hopefully Gabriel, having more experience in the offense and all that and more trust, allows him to call it differently, which is actually where I want to go next, because now that he's got his first start out of the way, I'm curious what the offense will look like as Kevin Stefanski starts to maybe give Dillon Gabriel even more. But I'll say this, if he's the guy that he thinks that Kevin Stefanski has touted him as being, the training wheels should be coming off pretty quickly for him. We'll talk about it coming up in the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is, of course, back. And right now, FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and you get $300 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And the best part about FanDuel is, listen, I love following along with the NFL season in its entirety based off of just FanDuel, like being in the app, engaging with it, placing some bets. And they have options for however you like to bet. Maybe you just want to bet on a certain player hitting a certain milestone in a game. That's a perfectly fine and reasonable way to bet on sports. You can also, though, combine those a couple milestones, or even maybe throw a money line on it and build a same game parlay. Or if you just want to ride a live money line as the game unfolds, you're more than welcome to do that too. FanDuel, quite literally, is the best way to follow along with the NFL season. It makes every game more exciting, whether your team is playing or not. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app today, and get started now. All right, so we've heard a lot about Dillon Gabriel over the course of the last 5 months since he got drafted in April, and his supercomputer brain, and how much they valued the conversations with him, and how they held a private workout with him just to see like what he could do, the throws that he could make, and sort of check some of those boxes. And it seems like it was a beneficial conversation in setting for the Browns to ultimately decide we're going to pick him at number 3, or not number 3, but in the third round, make him the guy that we're sort of tying ourselves to here to a degree, and that we really trust. And his experience was something that they valued as well within this team, or within this college experience, the 6 years that he was basically in college, and the 3 different teams he played for. He'd seen a lot. And so they thought he was kind of at an advanced stage in terms of his development. They told you that by the way they handled the 4-way quarterback competition, and where he was and how quickly he was getting first-team reps, especially once Kenny Pickett got hurt, and all those different things factored into where they made the final decision when the season rolled around. You know what? We're going to trade Pickett, and we're going to bank on Dillon Gabriel being our backup quarterback, our primary backup. And now he's the starter. And so my main point in all this is, like, yesterday, again, I thought was a solid performance, a respectable performance for a rookie going out there in a very structured, safe offense that he was given. I thought he played pretty well. The 19 of 33, they tried to have some balance in terms of the run and the pass, which I think is actually a good thing. Probably pretty beneficial overall to, they threw the ball 33 times. They ran it 32 times. So they were trying to sort of make sure he was comfortable. The run game was working. So, that's all going to be positive in terms of making sure that Gabriel can sort of settle in and that feel like the pressure kind of gets taken off of him to a degree. But I thought like 19 to 33 could be better completion percentage wise, but 190 yards, the 2 touchdowns, and his 2 touchdown throws were really good. There was the nice throw, the layered throw to David Njoku that set up the field goal before the half. Like, he made some nice plays, which is why I used the word intrigued about his performance. But my thing is this. Clearly, they were playing it safe yesterday. They didn't want him to turn the ball over. They wanted him to feel comfortable, all those different things. It's an aggressive defense. I understand all those things. That's not going to change. There's other aggressive defenses, including this week against Pittsburgh, that you're going to see in this league on your schedule. But I think that here's the thing. If the quarterback that this organization has touted for 5 months, if Dillon Gabriel is the guy that they've touted, if Dillon Gabriel is the smart kid that's picked up everything really quickly and done a really nice job in terms of his preparation and being ready to earn the starting job so quickly, then these training wheels that Kevin Stefanski had on in week 5 for him should come off pretty quickly. That's my opinion on it. It like, yes, I understand you're trying to sort of protect him, play it safe. You're in London, all these different things, which Kevin Stefanski, by the way, said that wasn't a huge factor. They week to week, they just come up with a different game plan. They sort of execute it, and that's what they were asked to do this week. That's all he sort of said about it. But I do think, like, clearly there was a point made in making sure they weren't going to turn the football over and that they were going to help Dillon be as successful as possible by giving him sort of like the easy stuff to sort of run here. And I think that's commendable, fine. But as the weeks go on, that can't be the case. Like, again, you got another aggressive Steelers team. You're 1-4 at this point in the season. Like, what do you have to lose? And that's why I go back to like that sequence, the 4-minute drive with 3:27 to go. You get the ball back, and why I say be more aggressive. Like, what do you have to lose? You're a 1-3 football team. You're desperate for a win. Your offense can't do anything week after week. Like, be aggressive. Go for it. Do something. Move. Like, push the ball downfield a little bit. And I understand trying to, again, set Dillon Gabriel up for success. But this is also supposed to be about like let's put him out there and see what he can do and sink or swim to a degree. Like, you're supposed to be sort of evaluating who he is as a player, if he can be anything for you. I get maybe the first week he plays, it starts, you're not going to do that, and you're not just going to throw him to the wolves. But from this point forward, man, if he's the guy that they've touted, the training wheels should not be on for an extended period of time here. Like, next week, you should see even more. You should see them be more aggressive with him and allowing him to do some more things. The week after that, they should do the same thing. Like, it should be more and more and more and more each and every single week. And if it's just playing it safe, you're not going to see this offense get to 20 points for a while. Like, if that's the offense you're going to run, it's not going to be a surprise that you're going to come up short of 20 points again and again and again. And it as much as it felt like a different offense, not a different offense, but as much as it felt like a slightly better version of the offense on Sunday, it was still a lot of the same because drives were stalling out. There was guys not miscommunications on different routes. There was drop passes once again. There was bad offensive line play. I get all those things are factors, but you got to sort of create your own luck in this league to a degree too. And you got to be able to trust Dillon Gabriel if you think he has a chance to be a starter for you. And if you're touting him as what they've touted him as, and he's smart, he can pick things up quickly. And I'm not doubting all those things. I think Gabriel is a very smart kid. But if that's how they feel about him, if that's what if there's evidence of those things, and that's part of the reason they drafted him, they need to be able to open this thing up a little bit more and trust him to do more. And that's kind of my point. I think that'll start to happen. I hope that'll start to happen because it's the only way that the offense is going to even change at all and get better as the season goes on is if they start to allow Dillon to do a little bit more and a little bit more. But we got to see it. We got to see it first, and hopefully that starts next week in Pittsburgh, which is going to be a tough place to play. We know that. Browns, by the way, are the only team of the 13 teams that played internationally that play a team on the road when they get back from their international trip. That the team they're playing is coming off of a bye. The Chargers played in a road game when they got back from their international trip, but remember their international trip was on a Friday, week 1, so they got a couple extra days to recover, and their trip was also on this. It was only a 2-hour time difference because it was in Sao Paulo, and it wasn't all the way overseas across in London. So I found that kind of interesting. I know there's sometimes like conversations about when to have your bye week, and I think teams sometimes can say they don't want it after their trip across for an international game, but it's also the point that like they're playing a team coming off of a bye and they're on the road. Most of the other teams either got a home game after their international trip or are on a bye, and so that's what's kind of crazy about it. But regardless, it's going to be a tough test, but I hope that we get to see more from Dillon Gabriel against the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 6, because there should be more and more on his plate if he's the quarterback that they have sold him as being, and if he is the prospect that they sold him on being. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thanks for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. If you like what you heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcasts, and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Of course, you can always check out the Locked On NFL podcast as well. There's always that early episode with Tyler the Madman Rowland, and then the later episode with Tony Wiggins as well. You can find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, I'd like to remind you to keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I'll talk to you on Tuesday with my good friend Lance Riseland, breaking it all down for you. See you, Cleveland.